Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
Hi!
And we have returned to maybe a more professional setting, but that's okay because we're getting ourselves back in form because last time we did a very wacky, zany, insane episode looking at 1.5 episodes of Phineas and Ferb with two friends of ours, Izzy and Hannah. Please check that out. Just know what you're getting yourself into.
We think about it like this. We decided that we needed to do at least one decent show this week.
Yeah.
Because we put out a practically fictional show. It was absolutely insane.
Also, just in case if they canceled on us again, which we were expecting 100%. But luckily that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And we're still recording this episode.
Yes.
On season 3 of The Wire, this show that is on HBO, or at least it was on HBO. It was premiered on HBO, I should say. And you can still watch it on HBO Max. This season came out in 2004, and I want to get out off the bat in the front end that this season is absolutely incredible. Like, it does everything that season 1 does in terms of storytelling and pacing and what it's trying to say with the story and more. And the show really hit its stride again. Season 2 was weaker in comparison, but I mean, season 2 was still the quality that this show delivers, but to a lesser extent. While here, back in season 3, once again, the show hit its stride, and it was back in form. Mac, what were your first impressions?
I was about to use the exact same phrase, back in form. It's absolutely the Wire that I remember seeing in season 1, that was lacking in season 2, and I think it's really, for me at least, it boils down to a matter of present conflict. There was very present conflict in every single scene of season 1. I would say at least the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Season 2, it lacked. There was present conflict, especially in the Sabatka stuff.
Right.
But there wasn't always conflict. With this season, we got back to constant looming conflict. Not a conflict that you just like watch and is important for the next couple seconds, but a conflict that will carry you throughout the entire episode, that will occupy your brain space, which is fantastic.
And it's conflict that I feel is more personal for most of the characters, right? As opposed to the second season. It felt like a lot of the conflict was kind of personal for like half the characters.
Yes.
Right? While this is a sort of investment that's been boiling since season 1, right?
Yeah.
Especially for McNulty, for Kima, for Lance Reddick's character, Cedric Daniels. It's the whole pot and caboodle with this season. And they really go back into having the Barksdale investigation, right? And have that be the a focal point of this season's storytelling, as well as this season's sort of objective and target for a lot of these characters, regardless of what side they were, regardless of whether they were the detectives or whether they were part of a drug operation. But there was this sort of sun, the star in the center that everything was orbiting around. And that was the Barksdale investigation, as opposed to the second season where it felt like it was trying to tell two different stories at once.
Another huge one is that in season 1, we're given all of these awesome, very deep and complex characters.
Yes.
And in season 2, there was almost no payoff to any of those characters and no change. No one really changed in season 2. And in season 3, we saw a lot of change, serious change. Really, in my mind, the only thing that happened in terms of change to main characters in season 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been actually thinking about this, the only thing you need from season 2 to get from season 1 to season 3 is Prop Joe and Stringer Bell team up.
Essentially, yeah. Like, season 2 is really, really important for season 3 in the sense of Stringer Bell, in the sense of Idris Elba's character.
Which can be condensed to like 10 minutes.
Right. I mean, but which is fine because, I mean, like we said, season 2 is still pretty good. But what is nice now is that because they did that, and we were, or at least I shouldn't say we, at least I was sort of criticizing where season 2 was telling two different stories at once, and I did kind of want them to sort of pick a lane, because if you just pick one lane, then you can tell that one story really well. It's hard to tell two different stories really well. However, because they picked two lanes, because they picked the Sabatka story, and because they still wanted to maintain the story that was going on with Barksdale and crew, it allowed you to see a Stringer Bell that was important that ended up being in season 3, right? So a big major conflict, which you could see a mile away, but it was still fascinating to watch, was the conflict between Stringer Bell and Avon Barksdale.
Yeah.
The two head honchos of that Barksdale drug operation, where essentially they sort of, there's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But they help each other, and they grew that organization together. And once Avon Barksdale, he went to jail. Once that happened for those 2 years or so in the show's time, and Stringer was allowed to sit back, lounge back, put his feet up on the ottoman, that's when already everything was starting to bubble underneath. And so when Avon comes back and it's all about, we need to get the corners back, we need to get the territory back, Stringer's like, we are beyond that, man.
Yeah.
And so immediately, there's this intense conflict between the two of them that starts happening. But because it was honestly really well set up in season 2. Like I said, I know I was criticizing season 2 for telling the two stories, but those two things, me criticizing season 2 for the two stories, as well as praising it for telling Stringer Bell's side, those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And I think they told the Stringer Bell side really well because of how much it sort of trampolined into this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you that they definitely didn't do a great job of telling both stories, but I actually don't have a problem with them telling both stories. Just like you said, it is hard, but I'm only okay with you telling two stories if you keep the ball rolling.
Yes.
with Avon, with Stringer Bell, and especially with the cops.
Yeah.
We got absolutely fucking no cop progression in season 2 whatsoever. I didn't really get anything from the cops, which was sad, because those are the people that you spend so much time with, especially in season 3.
I mean, you got a little bit of McNulty, but like if this show had a protagonist, it would be McNulty, so that doesn't really work well. You know, a lot of those characters don't really change except for maybe Kima.
And we'll get and we will get back to
season 3 happens.
We will get back to McNulty and Kima in a moment. But just like you said, they really did pave an awesome road for themselves whenever Avon came back. I'm actually going to go ahead and dip into my gold medal right now.
Yes.
My gold medal. And I think it might be corny because once I started after I finished season 3 and I started looking up season 3, it seems like this is a very popular opinion. But I'm just going to say it anyway. Best scene of the show so far.
Yeah.
Whole show, whole series so far. Mm-hmm. Avon and Stringer Bell. Avon is talking to him. You know what I'm about to say?
I think so. I'm excited.
Avon's talking to him exactly like you were talking about, all right, like, here's the plan. We need to take back our corners, all this stuff. And then Stringer Bell is like, no. We need to start buying up. We need to start creating a business. We're bigger than this. It's growing a lot more.
We're not dreaming anymore.
Yeah, right.
We are living in this now.
We are businessmen. And Avon is like, well, you might be a businessman, but I was just born to be a gangster.
Yeah.
That was so sick.
But there was something terribly honest about that too.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because in so many ways that Avon Barksdale, Wood Harris's character, is this sort of, he represents the past, right?
Yeah.
Where and he's constantly bringing up, hey, remember how this guy took care of this situation 20 years ago, or this other guy took care of this situation, and how they were able to intimidate these people in this territory. There's so much of that through that character, and it was this beautiful juxtaposition with Stringer Bell, that Stringer Bell was this sort of new school of business for this crew, but because of that foil, it just gave itself beautifully to this dynamic that, of course, they work really well together.
Yes.
And when they aren't working together, something bad is about to happen. the straw is about to break that camel's back
Right.
any second.
Right, and you're talking about how Avon was representative of the past, and how that was something that was an awesome conflict point between Avon and Stringer Bell. But they were even setting us up for that the entire season, because they introduced us to a whole new character that I loved, by the way, Cuddy.
Oh my God!
Cuddy's so good.
That's my gold medal.
I don't blame you, man.
Chad L. Coleman's Cuddy
Unbelievable.
was an excellent introduction into the
Unbelievable.
series. Please get into why he's an excellent
Yeah.
introduction. Oh my God. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, clearly, just like you said, he deserves the gold medal because he is, in my opinion, and I think you'll agree with me, the best actor of this season.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. And maybe, I'm looking at the cast list right now, also maybe up there with the best written character this season.
I agree.
Up there.
For sure. He was given a lot. Although I was excited that Omar got to go through a couple more things than he did last season. Like, he got quite a bit more, which is good, because obviously he was fantastic first season.
I mean, we saw
he's
so
like the
many
poster
more
boy.
characters this season
Yeah.
struggle.
Yes.
And that was the difference. That was the difference, right? Where we don't necessarily need to get a lot of that in the first season, because we're still trying to get to know everybody, right?
And
you know, we still had a fair share of that in the first
Yeah.
season. And then second season comes along, kind of splits it in half. And then the third season comes back. Dude, almost everybody is struggling one way or another, and a lot of them with their own demons. And it just provides excellent storytelling and character, and fleshes them out to a T.
Yes, I literally wrote down in my notes. I said, everyone is making more mistakes.
Yes.
It's not just that they are confronted with more problems. It is that in the menial things, they are also getting all of those wrong too. Every single time, like, the first couple episodes are just dedicated to people fucking up their jobs. And and once the lower people start fucking up their jobs, then the people on the next level above them start doing the same, and it goes all the way up the chain. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it was interesting because so far it's just been a matter of, like, we're following the little guys, and then we just kind of have to wait for the big head honchos to trickle down into the lower parts. But it was cool to see how that was only really in terms of big decision making. In terms of fucking up and making mistakes, it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. It starts at the bottom and then works its way up to the top, and it was really cool to watch that. Yeah. But back to Cuddy, he literally is the past, right? He shows up. He hasn't been around in a minute, and the entire time that he is getting reinitiated or whatever, if you will,
back into
reinstated.
Avon Barksdale's operation,
right? He won't stop making comments about, damn, this is not how we used to do it. And man, like, this isn't like the old days.
Like,
and,
oh, this is a semi-automatic pistol. I'm used to a revolver.
Yeah.
Like, something as simple as that.
Right.
But it's this, I mean, the present and in many ways the future to him hits him like a truck, because he was in prison for 14 years.
Right.
And so when he gets out, and the first thing he wants to do is live a normal life. Yeah, it's a beautiful commentary that the show also does. That
because he tries.
He tries.
He really does.
And it's not necessarily like people need to give him handouts. No, it's just, I mean, he's not getting assistance anywhere, to the point where it's easier for him to do the wrong thing than it is to do the right thing. And that's the issue that the show is pointing out. Yeah. Exactly. So naturally, he goes back to the drug operation and figures out very quickly when he is looking one of Marlowe's men. Marlowe is another drug kingpin that's at play in Baltimore that is constantly also butting heads with Avon in regards to territory. When he is looking at one of Marlowe's lieutenants with the pistol in his hand, about to gun him down, it's like in that moment something breaks. And you see that, and you see that in the writing, and you see that in the acting, and you see that in how the scene is shot. And so something in him breaks, and so then you get to see him go back on this journey to, like, find himself again. Yeah. And that is a huge thing thematically that happens in this season, where it's a lot of people trying to find themselves.
Yeah, and exactly what you're talking about with Cuddy, it all wraps back to that one line, that one moment with Avon and Stringer, when Avon looks at him and says, you're talking about being a businessman. I'm not cut out to be a businessman. I'm cut out to be a gangster. And that is...
And in that moment, something broke.
Yes, absolutely. And also, that's exactly what Cuddy was talking about. That's exactly what was happening with him, right? Where he was trying to be a decent guy, but you realize in the moment that Cuddy goes back to the gang, and in the minute that Avon is talking to Stringer, they didn't choose this necessarily.
Yeah.
This was given to them. This is the easiest version of life they could possibly live, is the one that they're living right now, just like you said.
Cuddy is like a different retelling of D'Angelo's sort of story in season 1, where they realize in the middle of it, when everything is going off around them, they realize the mortality of the situation.
Yes.
And they realize
I love that. Yeah.
in that moment, oh my God, like, I truly only have this one life, and these kids are dying because somebody wants a corner.
Yeah.
Like, and there's something that both D'Angelo in season 1 and Cuddy in season 3 kind of realize. D'Angelo sort of explicitly stated, but what I love about Cuddy's story is that nothing is really told about him, but everything is so clearly portrayed, where he realizes, yeah, this is not for me anymore. I value the living.
Yeah.
You know? And
another
one of the things that resonated with me a lot about this season, which it was the case in season 1 and it was the case in season 2, but this time it was exemplified, is this idea of the cycle. I brought it up in season 1, how everything went back to normal when they arrested Avon and everybody. Everything just went back to normal. Everything was on a cycle. Same thing at the end of season 2. Everything was a little bit broken, right? The cycle had some wrinkles in it, but the cycle maintained. That circle at the end of the day was still a circle, right?
Yeah.
And then you have in season 3, it felt like so much more people who were trying to break that cycle.
Yeah.
One way or another. And you can look at it with so many characters. I mean, if we want to keep talking about Cuddy, like Cuddy is one example of later on in the season, he opens his own boxing gym.
Yeah.
And tries to break the cycle of kids, of young kids like himself back in the day, getting involved in this cutthroat, literally, operation.
Yeah.
And he's trying to save those kids. And then you also have
Bunny,
thank you. Mac, could you explain what Bunny does in this season when he tries to break the cycle? And like I said, this goes for so many of the characters in this show.
Yes.
And it is beautiful.
But this is the one
because it makes the stakes so much high when they try to do something different.
Yes, and but just like we were talking, I mean, same with season 1, same with season 2, and again, also season 3, there's always one character that isn't one of the, I hate to say it like this, the repertory players of the show. The ones that are consistent. That they're mainly here for this season, right?
Yes.
And Bunny, I think, is one of those.
Yeah.
One of those that he's mainly in this season. He wasn't really here before. I can't imagine he's going to be an immensely big character afterwards. Immensely big, I know, is redundant, but whatever.
But Major Bunny Colvin.
A
district commander of the West Side.
So the first couple episodes, him and all of the other majors, all the other higher-ups in the police force are being just reamed constantly, day in and day out, by their boss, talking about how they need to keep murders down.
By Burrell.
Yeah, talking about how they need to keep numbers down. They promised a certain amount of numbers of murders to the mayor. They said, we're not going to have this many murders this year. And the mayor said, okay, sweet, as long as I can I can push that number to the press. And you can't do that. That's suicide as a cop. You can't predict the number of murders you're going to have because you have no fucking clue. Yeah. Especially in Baltimore, where it's
this
increasing.
Is a Minority Report. You can't do thought crimes. You can't prevent murder.
Especially whenever the past couple of years they have been on a steep incline of murders, right?
Yeah.
And so all of the majors, all of the commanders, all of them are pretty much like, okay, well, we might as well give up. Who fucking cares? Like, we're just gonna either flub on the numbers or just say whoops, sorry, and move on.
Or put some guys on overtime. Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, see what happens. Bunny decides, just like you were talking about, this is what happens every time. Fuck it, I'm done with it. We're changing everything.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something totally different in my district.
And he breaks the cycle in his own way.
So his own way is that he is going to, because he realizes that all of the murders really link back to the drug deals. He's going to legalize drugs, but only on 3 streets.
Yeah, on
in
these
his entire
designated
district.
zones, he calls them.
And so he takes all of his cops and all of his detectives. They walk down to all the corners in which the people are dealing drugs, and they talk to them directly. They say, "Okay, I know you're not dealing drugs or whatever, but if you're going to deal drugs, do it on these streets, and we'll leave you alone." They straight up say that. And no matter what he does, it's interesting, like you were talking about. No matter what he does to break the cycle, no one's willing to let them break the cycle. So much so to the point where the detectives are telling all of the drug dealers that they can legally sell drugs on these specific streets. And all of the dealers are like, no, we're not going to do that. And they're like, why not? You don't have to go to fucking jail and you can keep selling fucking drugs, dude. And they're like, they're like, why don't you go back to chasing us and we'll go back to doing what we do? Like, don't mess with what we already have. Just keep life the way it is. Like, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, the drug dealers are like,
because
these
he's
are my
doing
corners.
all this to get those corners to be back to being safe.
Yes.
Again, to have just people
Yeah.
come out and just
Because
live.
his main problem is not necessarily just the people that are dying in the gangs. It's that all this gang violence is happening in neighborhoods with random pedestrians.
Yeah.
And people are getting shot left and right whenever they don't have to, and they're not
It's
involved in
collateral
gangs
damage,
at all.
yeah.
Exactly. Collateral damage. And so he was like, okay, maybe I can't decrease the murders, but how can I take the murders to a place that it won't affect as many civilians? And he picks these 3 streets and tries to push them there. And I think, well, although of course that's the part of the show where you're like, would that happen in real life? I don't know. It probably couldn't do that, but very worth it. I think that was one of my favorite parts of the entire season.
What this season does differently is that it asks you, the viewer, much more questions in comparison to the first and the second season. So in the case of Bunny's experiment, and he calls it an experiment, it really has you ask yourself, what is justice?
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, all you're seeing, too, is that with Rawls and with Burrell and how they're talking down to all these majors, you got to get these numbers down, right?
Yeah.
You see with so much more, like, that's the priority, right? The priority is not keeping people safe. It's that this is going to look bad in the press. You know, it's like, that's the priority. But then, so Bunny does this experiment, and where he, makes these drugs legal, and it actually sets up for this really nice but sad sort of scene at the very end. Very, very end. Last scene of the show with Bunny and Bubbles. And so Bunny says to Bubbles, "It was a good thing, huh?" And then Bubbles just says, "I'm just saying," you know, like in response to Bubbles saying, you know, anybody can go here, a fiend can go here, get some drugs, and everybody will leave him be. And then Bunny was like, "Is that a good thing?" And then Bubs was just like, "I'm just saying," because is it a good thing?
Yeah.
When nobody is stopping
Right.
the drug fiend from being a drug fiend?
Yeah.
When nobody is stopping that person from, to be blunt, like harming themselves mentally and physically. When we see one of Bubbles' friends actually die because of how hard he was going, because he was allowed to go so hard. Like, was it actually worth it? Was it actually worth it? Yeah, to maybe have those corners and to have those people come out, but you're selling your soul a little bit, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's a very similar question that it's actually a play that you've done. I think we've talked about it on the show before. It's a play called The Nether.
Oh, man.
And conceptually, what happens in the Nether is there's this sort of like virtual reality where they'll essentially send criminals there, but they'll send criminals to this virtual reality not to sort of aid them, but to indulge their desires.
Yeah.
And so one character in this show is a pedophile. And when I say show, I mean the play, The Nether.
Yeah.
One of those characters...
not The Wire.
One of those characters is a pedophile. And so it makes you ask the really hard question, well, this pedophile, because he's in this VR setting, he's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
But is this right? Like, is this what we should be doing? And so The Wire Season 3 asks a very similar question where, okay, people are now allowed to come out into these corners, but is this what we should be doing? Like, this isn't actually solving anything. This is putting a bandage over a bleeding wound.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's a good stopgap for the time being. But at the end of the day, like, these people are still consuming drugs and damaging their bodies and their minds. There are still these criminals who are getting paid left and right. Mind you, also, the system doesn't really help them. We see that in Cuddy's situation. So it's so much easier for them to just be drug dealers anyways. And then the cops just let it all happen right in front of them. Like, what? And then when you go up to the top, when you go up to Rawls and you go up to Burrell, all they're talking about is numbers. And then you go up farther than that to the mayor and to other politicians and councilmen, that all they're talking about is the elections, is numbers. That it's actually really weird when you have Aidan Gillen's character, Tommy Carcetti, and he's actually talking about, like, him wanting things to get better, but there's this part in me where I'm just like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you're telling the truth, and it can be both things, right? That he can focus 100% or like 95% on the numbers and trying to get elected, and also really care about the safety on the streets. But I'm also like, I don't believe you when you're saying, like, that's what you value right now, because from what I can see, at least there, and then everything going down is corrupted one way or another by someone or something or some desire.
And you were talking. Okay, so you were talking about the.
I said a lot.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to the first 2/3. You were talking about the Nether. You were talking about that whole dilemma that you're faced with, and it reminds me of. In teaching, you're faced with this every single day, and we talk about it a bunch, right? It's a huge question in training, and it's basically this. You're teaching a class. Everyone in the class, you're teaching 30 kids, let's say. 29 of the kids are understanding. They're keeping up with you. Mm-hmm. They're getting decent grades. A few of them are, you can tell that if you stop giving them as much attention, they're going to start falling behind. But if you keep up what you're doing, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
One kid just transferred into the class. Loud, talkative, does not understand, does not want to understand, wants to specifically distract everyone else in the class, including you.
Yeah.
Very disrespectful, does not give a shit.
Right.
How much time do you spend on the kid? How much time are you going to spend on that kid? And I've been guilty of both, of extremes in both ways. I've been guilty of not giving that kid any attention and making sure that 29 of my students are passing. But then I'm screwing that kid over because I'm not giving him what he clearly needs.
Yeah.
And then and this happened like fucking yesterday, where in one of my classes, there's just one kid, and I spent most of the time of that class period not entertaining him, but like trying to convince him to learn anything. And I know that like really hindered the rest of the class. And it eats at me all the time because there's no way to win. Yeah. And that's what Bunny is going through in the last moment. Because it's not just that it's a conversation between two random people. It is the major of the district of police.
The district commander.
Talking to the most notable and obvious drug addict on the show. Yeah. About...
Like, so noticeable that he is a CI.
Right. Literally. Yeah, right. Asks him directly, whenever I gave you the drugs that you wanted, was it worth it? Did you like it? And he can't give an answer.
Yeah.
insane. Absolutely insane. And again, similar things happen to me in the classroom where I'm like, what's the best case scenario for you? Is it leaving right now? If I allowed you to go home and told all your teachers that you were going home, would you like to? Would you rather be home than here now that you've been...
If I gave up on you, is that what you want?
Exactly. Now that you've been through the pandemic, you clearly don't want to learn what I have to give you. Is there anything you do want to learn? What can I give you? What is your end goal here? And their end goal is always... And they always say something along the lines of, I mean, yeah, I want to be in school. And I'm like, do you? What do you want? What do you want from school? And they're like, I don't know. I just know that I should be in school. I'm like, okay, then why don't you start acting like it? And then they never do. And then they're like, okay, yes, sir. And that works for that moment. And then tomorrow they come in and are just as bad.
Really fast. If you are a utilitarian, you love Bunny. You love Bunny. If we're talking about like net positive of like happiness, then like Bunny is your guy. But that's the sort of like, but that is the question that you have to ask yourself too, is just how do I view my own and the sort of morality that we should be living in as a people, right? As a community, I should say. That better yet. Mm-hmm. And that's a really, really important question that not only is the show asking its own characters, but it's also asking you. It's just like, well, I mean, they put the situation in front of you, so it's only natural for the show to be asking you, so what do you think, you know? Right.
Especially because it's the last moment you're left with.
Yeah.
It's a question that comes often and at the last.
Yeah, and you get these like small scenes, and it's even a scene where it's actually Bubble that's going through one of these zones at night, and not only literally, but figuratively speaking, it's a really dark scene because it just feels like anarchy is everywhere and everybody's okay with it.
Yeah, right. I am curious. What did you think of it?
It kind of made me sick to my stomach in a way. Like I honestly
like letting it happen.
Letting it happen, and then having that scene with Bubbles walking through it at night, and then also having that scene with Bunny and Bubbles at the very end of the season, where it was really good and really nice to see just like these older people just being able to walk out of their home and not have to worry. There is something, you can't describe that feeling necessarily in words, where you don't have to worry about what's 180 degrees to you. Yeah. You know, that you don't have to worry about what is behind you right now. Is something bad going to happen that I don't know about? Whether to me or somebody across the street that's going to affect me directly? Yeah. Is that going to happen? Like, that's something that you can't describe fully, and it's really, really difficult to put into words, but then it's still that, but at what cost is this? Like, what is the cost? Like, if we look at it in a sort of economic sort of point of view, the cost is that, hey, you know, in this zone and maybe some anarchy here, but everybody outside of it's really happy. And we even see in the numbers that Bunny's, like, in that district, that crime rate in that district, Bunny's district, goes down by, like, up to 14%.
Yeah.
14% in, like, a month or two.
Yeah.
That is insane.
It's the exact same as another. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Absolutely insane.
Yes.
I don't know if it was worth it. And that's a really bad answer to give.
No, I mean, I understand where you're coming from.
But I think what it does is that it better shows the issue that's really at play.
Yeah.
Where these people aren't really getting any help in the first place.
Right.
Where it's so much easier to fall into these vices, to fall into the clutches of these demons. It is so much easier to do that than to do the right thing.
Yes.
And so, just from a pragmatic point of view, why wouldn't you do the easier thing? Right. When you can also make more money out of it, assuming that you become a drug dealer. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
Because it's illegal?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So I can get my family with a roof over the head and maybe some food, some clothing, and I'm able to just sleep at night on a bed? Like something as simple as that. Why wouldn't I go after that?
Yeah.
But everybody is telling me, oh, that's a terrible thing. Don't do that. That's awful. Come on.
Yeah.
Like, it points to the bigger issue.
Yeah.
And it foils beautifully to Cuddy's situation where he has to go through just trials and tribulations, literally backbreaking stuff of trying to get this gym off the ground, to break this cycle, to help others. And
yeah,
it puts me at a loss for words, because what this show and what some characters on the show does is that, like, it's all Bunny's fault. Look at this terrible thing he did. But all of them refuse to look in the mirror themselves and refuse to ask themselves, oh, maybe there's something a lot bigger at play that I can help erase.
Yeah.
But instead, hey, you need to get your numbers down. And that's the end of that.
Yeah. I was watching, before I came over here with my family, I was watching The Ozark. Have you ever heard of that show?
Yeah.
With Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman, yeah.
Fantastic show. And there's this scene where, because he's like a money launderer, and there's like a bunch of, he's involved in a lot of drug stuff. He doesn't ever touch the drugs, but it's happening around him a lot. And his family kind of gets drawn into it, and it's this big mess, right? And so his son, like genius level IQ, but he's asked obviously to keep quiet, and he doesn't say anything about like what his dad is doing. He goes to school, and every kid in class has to sign a waiver that says, you know, like, I promise to be drug free and like turn in anyone that I know is involved in drugs and or alcohol.
Right.
And everyone signs it because it's like the kids are like, yeah, sure,
whatever,
drugs are
dare.
bad.
Yeah.
And the kid doesn't sign it. Mm-hmm. And she's like, why aren't you signing it? And he was like, I just think it's ignorant. And she was like, what? And he's like, I just think that to say that drugs are overall bad is an ignorant thing to say. Like, that's kind of a slippery slope. It's kind of an ignorant thing to say. That means that you don't have a complete understanding of what drugs mean on the world scale. And the teacher's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he's like, do you know what GDP is, gross domestic product? And she's like, yes, I know that.
I took economics. Yes,
yeah, right. And he was like, so there are theories that talk about how the only reason that the world economy didn't absolutely crash after the fall of 2008 with real estate and the stock markets, the only reason that didn't crash completely and that we're all not in absolute mayhem right now is because of drug money, because that was the only consistent money at the time. And it is served to several research and studies and everything that proves that the only consistent money in the world right now, the only safe money in the entire world, in any economy whatsoever on the world scale, is drug money. That's it. The only thing that comes close is tech, but with the rise of viruses and hackers and malware and everything, that's a slippery slope too. The only consistent money that anyone is making anywhere in the world is drug money. Period. The world can't survive without it, especially the American economy. It depends on it, actually, which is crazy. Like, it was so badass, but
yeah,
it makes you really think for a second. Like,
oh, maybe drugs themselves are not the issue, and maybe the organizations themselves are not the issue. Maybe what got them there?
Sure, yeah. You know? Right. And like, clearly,
like, why have we allowed drugs? I mean, to sort of like ask the question in relation to what you just said from Ozark. How did we allow drugs to be this consistent money-making business when it is so harmful to ourselves?
Yeah.
Why have we allowed that? It's not because we don't have enough police standing on these corners, because they're going to find a way to do it anyways, and we see it in the show.
People are clearly aware, well the fuck aware, of everything that's happening in terms of drug dealing. For instance, this is the biggest example I can think of. Whether Bill Clinton knew it or not, in the 80s, the Arkansas government and police force for the state of Arkansas did look the other way, and plenty of people have been incarcerated for it, for the smuggling of hundreds of tons of cocaine into America from Central America. Proven. That's actually a thing, and that has happened. And the state government of Arkansas, knew about it.
Yeah.
They just couldn't put away specific people because they couldn't prove that. Like, for instance, Bill Clinton, that's the biggest name, knew for sure. So it just, it raises a lot of questions and curiosities.
Yeah.
And I think it wraps back to the most important question, and the question that Bunny has to ask himself when he makes the decision to legalize drugs and put them on these three streets, which is, the only reason that you are catching people that have the drugs and putting them in prison and worrying so much about the people that are dealing drugs and doing all this while putting all these people, the civilians, in harm's way, when you could keep them safe, like you were talking about, by putting them in these zones. The only reason you're doing all that is because you think there is hope for saving the people that are currently dealing the drugs or in the gangs or in these situations. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason you're doing it. If you ever lose hope or come to terms with the fact that they're never going to stop selling drugs, they're never going to stop doing what they're doing, then the zones thing all of a sudden makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's honestly, I don't know, like in that moment that he said it, and for a lot of the season, I was kind of on Bunny's side.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, you know what, honestly,
and me too.
If it's not going
like
anywhere,
idealistically speaking, yeah.
If the drugs are not going anywhere, and no matter what you do, you have an option. And like it comes down to this,
dude. But the thing was too, he's looking around his own department, and he says it to Carver in a scene later on in the season that what he has around him are not policemen, or they're soldiers.
Yeah,
and they're good for soldiering. Right. They're not good at policing.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah,
it is one of the best scenes this show has produced because of what it's saying right there, and it clearly exemplifies. Oh, that's right. Like, this show does not put cops on a pedestal. It is funny. It is a show that is primarily centered around these detectives in this group, these cops, these good police, bad police.
Co-made by a former cop.
Yes.
Hilarious.
That what the show does really well, they're all human.
Yeah.
They're all human. The show doesn't bullshit you about it. I look at this cast list, including the detectives, and honestly, especially the detectives. Every single one of those people are flawed, fundamentally flawed, have demons clawing at their backs every living second of the day, except for Lester Freeman, except for one person. This entire show has one person who I just look at, I'm like, hey, you're a good guy, and that's it. You know, I can trust in you being a good guy.
Yeah.
But I look at someone like Cedric
the only
Daniels,
reason he's a good guy is because he used to be an asshole.
Yeah.
He said that. He's like, yeah, I used to be where you are, but now I'm here, and I made the right calls.
Yeah.
Hilarious. What were you saying? Sorry.
Well, no, but it's just you look at somebody like Cedric Daniels, too, that he has demons of his own that sort of creep up at him. And there's also something really chilling about the lovemaking scene between him and Rhonda Perlman in the final episode. It's just like, it felt wrong. I don't know how to describe that scene, but it felt dirty.
Yeah. Well, also, he's just like a very creepy dude. Not in like a you know, in a sexual way, but like he's just very unsettling. He kind of has that Rami Malek look about him, where you're like, something's always up. Like something's like the wheels are turning in your head, and I don't know what it is.
And I also want to say, like, I believe in the good in Cedric Daniels.
True.
Right?
He's clearly very good at his job.
Yes.
Very successful.
But there is something, I don't know. I truly cannot find the words to that one scene, how they shot it, and just the sounds and the noises from that one scene.
Oh yeah.
There was something oddly unsettling about it. And it was funny because at the same time too, that I'm like, good for you, Cedric. Good for you that you know, you are pursuing your own desires, and you're not being like harmful to anyone.
Yeah, he's not specifically
and you're being honest with yourself
in the same way
because he's still technically married to his wife, but they're so clearly separated.
Yeah.
Kind of mutually, but kind of not, but kind of mutually. And so he pursues this new interest, and I'm just like, I don't blame him. Shit, no, I don't blame him at all. There was something about that one scene. Yeah. Cannot find the words. It was... Yeah.
Speaking of flawed characters, I want to shift to McNulty and Kima especially, because those are really, really interesting characters that changed a lot over the course of the season. But I feel like we should maybe touch on that when we come back afterward from our sponsor. All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello and welcome back to the Artenders with Mac and Dan. So where we left off was McNulty and Kima. That was what our next topic was going to be. So I want to start off with this very point-blank question for you. Okay? We're talking about how McNulty obviously has changed a lot over the past couple seasons, is a very flawed person, and is trying really hard to get better. Kima...
There's no bigger asshole in this show than McNulty, except for maybe Deputy Commander Rawls. But outside of that,
Rawls is an
McNulty is grade A bleep hole.
Yeah, and has no problem saying what all the asshole-ish things that he needs to say directly to a person's face.
He's literally hell or high water is how he operates.
Right, which obviously loses him a lot of allies and puts him in the doghouse a lot.
Yeah.
So, so Kima has been really solid and easygoing.
Good police.
Awesome police for the past 2 seasons and a good few episodes of this one. Is Kima starting to turn into McNulty?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, first of all, yes. Yeah. Yes, and by the way, yes, because they kind of joke about it, too. Also, really funny season, I want to get out there, too.
Yeah.
There are more jokes than you would think in the season.
Because there were some funny things that they've said in the past, but less punchlines than this season.
Yes.
Where there's clear lines where you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be laughing here.
Yeah,
that's great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they joke here, the characters in this season, where Kima is becoming McNulty.
Yes.
So something really interesting happens in this season. Where, and the seeds were planted in the second season, at least for Kima, where she is falling into those demons. And we see something break. And we see it really hit at the end of the season, where you see her exploring another body. Let's just put it that way, right? When she already has a girlfriend and a daughter. I mean, she has a daughter.
Yes.
And so that's happening. That's happening. This woman who is incredible and treats everybody with like love and kindness, and who is also tough, right? She is one of the most respectable people in this show. She falls into that. And then you have McNulty here. Once again, you kind of see a little bit of second season, but you really see it here in this season. And I said it for other characters, and I'll say it for him too, that he is breaking, or at least actively breaking, his cycle this season.
Yes. It
doesn't happen until like the last episode.
Yes.
But he is looking to break his own cycle, and he's one of those few characters where he was able to put a mirror up to himself and say, I need to change who I am because I'm not good enough for myself.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yes, so Kima is becoming McNulty. It's going to become the McNulty of the past, right?
Yeah.
That she is becoming. And so she also does the very thing that McNulty did years ago prior, where McNulty's wife would call him. He would be hanging out with some other girl, but he wouldn't pick up. So McNulty's wife would call Bunk, his partner. Ask Bunk, hey, where's Jimmy? Oh, he's actually doing this one thing right now. He's on a drive with a prisoner, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. He's busy right now. Okay, cool. Then Bunk would call McNulty, hey, your wife just called. I told her this, and this. So, thanks, bud. Boop. And that is what we saw happen in this season.
With Kima,
we had Cheryl, which is Kima's girlfriend, I believe, call McNulty himself, and he covers for her.
Yep.
Because he's not doing the right thing, but he's like protecting a friend.
Yeah.
Essentially. In a way, also not protecting her at all.
Yes.
But
Did y'all see the staging of the one of the first scenes we see with Kima and McNulty at the train tracks?
Oh, yeah, where they're drinking together, much like McNulty
Carbon copy of the
does
scene.
with Bunk.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they still do it this season, too, which is the funny part.
And the funniest thing is that they went so far with the staging that they even, like, did something that I was like, I'm not even sure that makes 100% sense. Yeah. But it's funny that you're really shoving it that hard. Like to the forefront that you need me to know this. So McNulty in that scene in was it second season?
Oh, I don't know what scene. You told me the scene.
No, the train track scene between Bunk and
dude, that happens like every season.
Okay, sure, right. So, in one of the versions of the scene,
sure,
McNulty starts the scene by coming back after taking a piss across the train tracks.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of this scene, Kima is walking back.
So right.
After taking a piss across the train tracks.
Is it heavy-handed? Yes, but it's probably.
It's like, was she squatting? I'm confused.
How else is she gonna do it,
she must. Yeah, but it was just funny. I was like, okay, cool.
Was it heavy-handed that Kima was becoming McNulty? Yeah, because they had clear visual illusions as well as characters literally saying, "Hey, you're becoming McNulty," right?
Right.
Was it heavy-handed? Sure, but it was probably like the only heavy-handed thing really that was going on in this season. So we kind of can let it slide.
Yeah, and they need to be a little heavy-handed because it wasn't the center of really any episode ever.
And we haven't really seen that progression yet, right? Because when we hear Kima's becoming McNulty, you would think to yourself, "Oh, we've already seen that with McNulty." But no, we haven't seen the McNulty of the past become the McNulty of the present.
I was about to ask.
And what we're seeing right now is McNulty exiting the present into like his new future self, right?
His season 4, Jimmy.
Yes. But we haven't seen that transition of past to the present for McNulty, while we are actually getting that progression for Kima right now.
Yeah.
And so it plays back to what I'm saying for a lot of these characters, that they all have demons, and some of them are good people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're all just people,
right.
And we should never forget that.
I'll be very interested to see if they make Jimmy into Bunk.
Into Bunk, just this tired old detective.
Kind of, yeah.
Doing his job, yeah. But even Bunk has his own demons, too. I mean, you see in the first season, it's actually this really funny and really not good, but funny scene. And when I say not good, I mean morally speaking, where we don't see it happen, but we know that he goes out with this other woman, and then Bunk's wife calls Jimmy later that night. He locked himself in the bathroom. You need to go get him out and talk to him. So Jimmy goes over, opens the doors of the bathroom, and Bunk is burning his own clothing because of the smell on them. And then Bunk said, because he's so drunk, he says, "I'm burning the evidence. You know, you can smell them. It's too bad. I have to do it. I have to get rid of the evidence." Do you not remember this scene?
I think I do. Yeah. I mean, I remember the fire, and I remember Bunk being so drunk. I totally forgot that the wife even called him and all that stuff.
But it's still to this, what I think the season does really well, that we're seeing a lot more characters become flawed.
Yeah.
It's not so much navigating out of their flaws. We see a good amount of characters entering some of their flaws.
Yeah.
And it does create a really nice juxtaposition for characters that are already in flaws, exiting them. As in Jimmy McNulty.
Yeah.
That I think it finally hits him in the season where, oh, I need to change. And it really gets to me in the scene between him and Beatty Russell, which Beatty Russell was a major character in the second season, did not appear at all for the third season, was mentioned a few times. Jimmy thought he saw her at one point, pulled up to a car, yelled, "Beatty Russell!" And then it wasn't Beatty Russell. But then she is in a scene at the very end of the final episode with Jimmy, and Sizzle Serve, it's the best scene, I think. But I'm only saying that really because it's my favorite scene.
Yeah.
But I think it's the best scene, and it's like what Jimmy says, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something along the lines in relation to himself of, "I pour everything into a glass, and there's a hole in it." And it's also him realizing his own mortality too.
Yeah.
Where
like, what am I doing?
like he thought to himself, exactly, where he thought to himself, this case defined me.
Yeah.
Who I am is this case. And once he realized that, once he actually clocked that, where he wasn't anything more than his work, then he was like, oh, I need to be more than just a person. I need to be more than just this walking and breathing robot that works in this this department.
Yeah.
I need to be a person. And I think what's funny is that what leads to that realization, I think partially too, is, and I'm actually really happy that the show did this, was kill Stringer Bell.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that yet.
Listen. You really get used to shows putting plot armor on characters.
Yeah.
And I really had the sense.
Plot armor. Yeah. That's funny, yeah.
And I really had the sense that Idris Elba's Stringer Bell was going to be there until the very end.
Yeah.
Right? Where, like a flash in the pan, Brother Muzone and Omar take him out, and he's gone.
Yeah.
Because Avon sold him out. But it didn't feel... It felt justified. That death felt justified in the storytelling of this show.
Yes.
Where it did not feel like shock value, even though, of course, naturally, there was. But it wasn't for the purpose of shock value.
No.
But it was it was for the purpose of the overall storytelling that Cuddy was experiencing, that Jimmy will experience, that you can die any second. And so in those moments, when you have the barrel looking straight at you, when you're asking yourself, what was I really doing it for? That's something to think about.
Yeah.
And so Stringer Bell's death led Jimmy to his own self-discovery of who the hell am I? And it leads to a very funny moment where Bunk, or I think it was Kima, tells Bunk how Jimmy took it. And Kima says, like he lost one of his kin. Which is insane because Jimmy hated Stringer Bell.
Right.
Wanted to get Stringer Bell so bad.
But that was it.
That his MO for these past, not really season 2, but really for these past 3 seasons was taking down Stringer Bell. And the fact that he couldn't made him realize, oh, that was what defined me, but that shouldn't be what actually makes me whole.
Yeah.
And so this thing that I thought made me whole, this thing that I thought I was pouring into a glass, this glass this entire time had a hole in the bottom of it. And I'm actually nothing.
Yeah.
But it provides this really human realization that I watched that scene and just the little bit of nuance from Dominic West's acting and just hearing like the little bit of crack in that voice when he's saying it to Beatty. And he says in the end of that scene too, where he doesn't want to drink with Beatty, but at least right now at that time of the night that he wants to go and meet the kids. Like there was like thinking about it. I'm not getting teary-eyed, but behind the eyes, I'm getting teary-eyed. Like, it messes me up when I love watching when people are flawed and they realize that they're flawed, the moment they realize that they're flawed, and they say to themselves, I'm nothing right now, but I want to be better.
Yeah.
And there's something outrageously human about that not a lot of shows visit. Not a lot of shows visit. And this show visits it very briefly in terms of that scene and in terms of that character, very briefly, but so eloquently and so articulately put. It could not have been done more beautifully.
So McNulty specifically, that's
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from for sure.
I talked a lot.
No. I wanted to give a little bit of pause because I felt like it was deserved.
I genuinely love that scene because, like, when Kima got shot in the first season, the emotion that's coming up in you as the audience is, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. But it's a very different emotion that's coming up from you when, between the Beatty and Jimmy scene, where, oh my god, you know, like, oh shoot, like he's a person, you know?
Yeah. And you're right that most shows don't really take a look at that in that way. Most of the time it is someone did something bad. I hope they get their comeuppance. Yeah. You know? But
yeah.
Yeah,
or,
he really...
And so many cop shows that like, this person's good End of story.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have like one tiny flaw about them, just like one little thing and just like a little knife in them, but it's just a little bit. It's not going to like stop the show or anything, but like it feels like the flaws of these characters are a big part of the storytelling of this show.
Yeah.
Not just the storytelling of the individual characters, but what the show is trying to say and do as a whole. And that's the difference so far that I've seen with this show in comparison to others, right? I've never seen, and I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here, I've never seen an ensemble this strong in both performance and in writing.
Yes. I can totally understand that. 100% I can understand that. Dominic West is a Brit, by the way.
I know.
I didn't even know that.
Which is funny in the second season where he does his really bad British accent.
Yeah.
And so then I think to myself, how would I even do a really bad American accent? Like that
takes a lot
because he's doing a Mel Blanc sort of thing where Mel Blanc was a voice and cartoonist for a lot of the Looney Tunes.
Oh, right.
Where he, if I'm not mistaken, did Bugs Bunny like as Daffy Duck. And then he did Daffy Duck as Bugs Bunny. Like, how would you even do that? Like, how do you wrap your mind?
That takes a minute to think about, yeah.
And so the same thing with that, and at least in the second season, where he's being this very brief undercover, where leads to this very funny moment where he's just having sex with two of these prostitutes, and he can't, like, it would be technically, I guess, considered sexual assault, but he's just like, this is what I signed up for. But as this very phony American.
Yeah.
But it's this British actor who is playing an American, phony Brit. He's this British actor playing an American, playing a bad British accent guy.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Dominic West enough, which is funny because I mentioned in the last segment how if there was a main character, it'd be him.
Yeah. And it's mainly just because he's been tried and true.
Yeah.
He's been consistent and good.
Yeah. In terms of the performance. And in terms of like the character storytelling too. I mean, we get a lot of him, and it's not because
there's not a lot of hot takes when it comes to McNulty.
No, but it's just well done.
Yeah.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
And you're talking about the flaws of each character and everything, and I couldn't help but notice that that's the definition of realism. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
And that is what sets this show apart, is that they do not care about entertainment.
Yeah.
They care about truth. Like that's the MO of the show.
And the MO of the show too is it's not telling you, like in CSI, NCIS, Hawaii Five-0, Blue Bloods, like Law and Order, that those are shows that are telling you this is justice, as opposed to this show asking you what is justice.
Right. That's a very good way of putting it.
We saw that in the first season. We saw that too in the second season. We really saw that in this season. Yeah,
this season feels most like the show, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It feels like the most representative of what the show is trying to be. And, I mean, we even see that whole realism thing in the development of Kima. All of Kima's big moments where you see actual change happening in her is just her sitting at home in silence.
Yeah. And spiraling down her own misery.
Yeah.
And that's the highlights.
Yeah, and she's just like staring at the TV. And it's like a 5-second shot. And then that's it. That's all you know
what's so good about that storytelling too? Is that as the audience member, you're like, oh no. Oh no, Kima, no.
Yes, exactly.
Kima, no.
That you see
get
her
5 seconds of her just blankly looking at the television by herself with a beer in her hand. And immediately you clock it. It.
Oh, yep. That's the look. That's it. Fuck.
Because some of the things that this show does is a little bit heavy-handed, but most of it is they don't spend too much time. They spend just enough time, and it's the perfect amount of time for you to get what this moment is trying to tell you.
Yeah.
It's incredible. this is definitely, like, I mean, it'd be unfair, once again, to compare it to the first and the second season, but it's what we have to go on, and it's only natural for us to compare because it's its own product, in a way, in this overarching story. But I think it's safe to say that this is the strongest season.
Easily.
Because of how much further characterization is explored for everybody. I mean, hell, we even got a scene with Bunk and Omar, very similar in terms of the breaking the cycle thematically, where Bunk is going to Omar and is trying to get some information from him, and ends the scene with, look, there are kids right now who are looking up to you, that are posing as you, and that are doing these mock fights and mock shooting at each other. And so I thought what made us, you and I, that we went to the same high school, a community, was that when somebody died and was on the street, that we would stick up for them and we would do something about it. And now you are becoming a whole new problem that you need to realize, and that you're better than that, and you need to stop it.
Yeah.
And
God, I forgot about that. That's such a good scene.
And it's just beautiful storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that one scene, that it says so much about the stakes for Bunk and the stakes for Omar.
And another thing that's awesome about the season, and this is the last thing that I'll say on this, is not only is there conflict, inner conflict, things of that nature, but it's also that we actually see repercussions, but not just hear about them. We watch them happen. This is the very first season where, because like even whenever Frank died in season 2, it was shocking, and you saw Nico like, oh no, but he had to act really fast. In this season, everyone, and not just like one or two people, not just the police force or whatever.
Yeah.
Whenever people died, it actually hit people this time, which was beautiful. Yeah. We got an entire episode where Omar didn't do anything because he was too busy mourning one of the people that accidentally got shot.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And as long as you have an episode that there is still moving story going on behind that, which there was, it's successful. It's very successful. And that happened several times, just like you said with Stringer. You saw Jimmy actually deal with that, not just hear about it or like that changes how he is later. You watched him in real time have to process that.
Yes. When you, I think we've both said it before too. When you see a character work through a process, or you see a character have a discovery, you freaking kiss the floor right then and there, because that's going to be some of the best moments in story that you're going to get in that piece of media.
And the awesome thing about The Wire is that overall, whenever those moments come up, it's cool because you can tell that they know that that's a moment.
Yeah.
It's not
both in the writing and in the acting and in the sort of like direction of the scenes. Yeah.
But they don't tell you that it's a moment.
Yeah.
They don't say, hey, look over here.
Yeah.
They just let it sit.
Yeah. And there's no music in this show. There's no music backing in the show. And they've done it 3 times in a row now, where really the only proper music backing for like a scene is the very, very last sort of montage.
Yeah.
Outside of that, there's next to no like underscoring in scenes. Maybe you mentioned it before, like songs playing in the background.
Sure, but still,
or like on the radio, right? But
which is interesting, but that's not going to save an actor.
Yeah, but the show is trusting its own work.
Yes,
it's trusting its own writing. It's trusting its own actors. Not to say and not to sort of put under the bus of musicians, especially composers, because I know as sure as hell I can't do that stuff, and there are so many things that need composers.
Yeah.
Right. But I think
I'd say 99% of the things I'm saying,
and The Wire is the exception.
Yeah.
Because of how it's structured. That you said it yourself. It is so enveloped in realism that having the music would actually kind of take you out.
Yeah.
That not having any sort of music actually keeps you in those individual scenes more because of how it sounds kind of cliche, but how authentic and real.
But the decisions that they've made have aided, like you said, them making the most realistic show possible.
Yeah.
Not just the genre of realism, but realistic show possible.
And realistic in the sense of what these characters go through, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about that. Maybe Bunny doing this experiment, maybe that's not so real. But then again, we're also living in a pandemic. So what is real? But yeah, we don't know. But what these characters go through are very real things.
Yes.
So incredibly real. And that is where this show succeeds, and that's where this season succeeds so much that it was just continuing this story that it's already set out to do.
Yeah.
And just really just cooked it more like a nice piece of steak on a grill.
Right. So, Danny Lavelle.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to most in season 4, and who are you looking for, hoping that you see in season 4 the most in terms of arc?
I have no expectations, which is just the worst answer to give on a podcast.
But that's great for you, though.
But the reason why I have no expectations, just now I have full trust in the show.
Sure.
Which is funny because after the second season, I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Even though I still enjoyed it, but I was still like, what the hell's going on here, guys? But after this season, I have full trust in the show that I don't really know what's going to happen, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
That I couldn't possibly tell you how things are gonna go from here. That maybe it'll follow some of Marlowe's things.
Yeah.
But really, I have no damn clue. I'm just happy that there is a season 4. And I'm gonna start it tomorrow.
Good.
And just because it's great.
It is.
Sometimes words are tough.
No, it's fine.
And it's not the greatest time to lose words, but my point being, damn. What about you, Mac?
I would say I'm really excited to see Stringer and Dee fight in the afterlife. No, I'm kidding. No. I would say I am specifically excited about McNulty.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where he goes now that it's finally going to be a different McNulty than we've seen for 3 seasons straight.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Kima just because I like that actress and I hope that she gets more stage time.
Yeah.
Screen time, not stage time.
It's
Party
okay.
foul. And I actually really hope that we keep Bunny around. I know that we're probably not going to, but I hope that we see him. I hope that we see some of the one-off characters
that
come
feel
back.
like seasoned characters. Yeah.
Yeah, like Nico, lovely actor. I want to see him back. I want to see the Greeks back.
Yes.
I would love to see
The fact that we got a scene with Beatty Russell had me grinning
I was about to say, Beatty Russell.
from ear to ear.
Yeah, love her to death. She's a great actress and earned her role.
Oh,
yeah, and I hope that we see some people come back that we earned a lot of space with.
Yeah.
So, with that being said,
Yes, sir.
next week we have a very special episode.
It's always special, isn't it?
It has to. Well, yes, it's always special, but it's our 30th episode, yeah. So, number 30.
Yeah.
So, this is what we're going to do. Rather than tackle a season of a show, I'm going to make you watch an entire series.
Okay.
4 seasons long, Rick and Morty.
Oh, Christ.
We're doing it. We are doing Rick and Morty, okay?
All right.
We're going to do it, and it's going to be good, and I promise it's going to be a good time. Not only is it going to... Because this is my only warning for you. After the first 2 seasons, you're going to be like, this stupid shit.
But I've seen the first either 2 or 3 seasons.
Right. What I didn't realize is that they were actually teaching us about the characters. Because if you don't remember the first 2 seasons... Because at first you're like, it's just a fun, stupid show. If you don't remember everything that happened the first 2 seasons, 3 and 4 don't make any sense. And it makes you go back and watch the first 2 seasons, and then you're like, wait a second, is this show actually, secretly smart?
Yeah.
Is this secretly doing
That
something?
they were purposefully having these building blocks, or at least already using what they had.
All of these dumbass moments were actually really solid storytelling moments?
Yeah.
What the heck? And so we will talk about it on the next episode. Thank you, Danny, so much for an awesome episode, and thank you guys for listening.